Alright, you guys, welcome back to episode 9.
Correct.
Yes, episode 9 of the... to the non-existent viewer Porn Again Christian podcast. I got that down.
Good job.
And so according to today, I did not upload last week's episode on Wednesday because, again, I'm having issues with my software for my sound recording, and I don't know what the issue is, so I'm trying to figure that out still. So hopefully I can figure that out soon, and when I do, then I will be able to upload. It allows me to record, but then I can't,
upload.
I can't convert them and save them as MP3s and then put them on Podbean, so... That's why I can't upload them. So when I can do that or try to find a different way to do so, then I'll be able to upload them. And when I do, I'll upload both episodes at the same time. So
because America.
Yes, because America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're getting very close. I think if we're not going to read the appendix, then today is the last episode.
If we're not going to read the appendix, yeah. I don't know how I feel about the appendix, but today might be the last episode of Porn Again Christian. We will probably continue talking about other things or another book, or just sit here and spew things at you because we can.
Talk. Yeah, I'm surprised. Yeah, we're already. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. We're already
finishing up because we're awesome.
He just stabbed if you didn't see that.
Well, obviously you didn't see that because y'all can't see me.
Maybe they heard the wind in the mic and just imagined a dab.
Whoosh, whoosh.
All right. So let's go ahead and start.
All right.
The last paragraph. I mean, not the last chapter.
I'm ready to go first.
Do you want? I'm going first this time.
Yes, you're going first because I went first the last 2 times. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. All right. Chapter 8, Pornography and the Slippery Slope of Ted Bundy. If you are the guy who at this point somehow still considers himself the exception to every rule who's able to manage his sexual sin, this next section should get your attention. Former Seattleite and graduate of the University of Washington, Ted Bundy became one of the nation's most notorious and feared serial killers for beating, raping, and then murdering at least 30 girls and women between the ages of 12 and 26. Yeah. So, just in case, I looked this guy up. It was a mistake because of how many things he's done. That's pretty crazy. I looked it up, and there's a lot. This guy is terrible.
And he's from Seattle.
And so, but yeah, we just looked it up just to see if Mark wasn't gonna describe who he was in this book, cover him. Pretty sure he was going to, but we did just in case. So yeah, no, he's nailing all of these. That's crazy. So yeah, let's just continue. Mm-hmm. Shortly before he was executed, he was executed.
Well, most likely because of all the accounts of murder that he was
committed. Okay.
He died in Florida.
Yeah, I think it's just funny that, it says on Google...
The electric chair. He was executed in Florida's electric chair in 1989.
Florida's electric chair... Dude.
You need to read more.
Well, no, it just says when on the corner when it just says Ted Bundy, it just says that he died in Florida State Prison, but I had no idea back then, that people were executed in prison.
They are still being executed in prison.
That's crazy. Shortly before he was executed, Bundy was interviewed by Christian leader James Dobson. Shockingly.
Shocking.
I don't know if he was trying to do that or wait.
Shocking.
Bundy admitted that he possessed none of the normal triggers for such sinful behavior, as he was raised in a loving Christian home with 5 siblings and did not experience any sexual abuse growing up. Rather, he confessed in clear detail how as a young boy he began, as most boys do, viewing common pornography, which grew into increasingly harder and more deviant forms of pornography that eventually led to his acting out his evil fantasies. Quoted below is an edited transcript of the conversation that occurred just 17 hours before Ted was led to the electric chair. I trust that it will be a sobering reminder to my Christian brothers that the sin of lust is an insatiable parasite that you must not feed, lest it grow and lead to death.
You want to be James and I can be Ted?
Oh, are we...
We're actually going to read this stuff.
Dude, is this like... Oh, I love this stuff. So you want me to be the
You'll be the Christian leader and I'll be the mad serial killer because I am mad anyway.
So, is this a... Right, I bet this is an interrogation right now.
Well, no, actually, technically it's a confession. But basically, yeah.
All right. Well, who's JCD? Oh.
JCD is James.
Okay, well, on the top it wasn't abbreviated, so.
Yeah.
All right. It is about 2:30 in the afternoon. You are scheduled to be executed tomorrow morning at 7. If you don't receive another stay, what is going through your mind? What thoughts have you had in these last few days?
I won't kid you to say it isn't something I feel I'm in control of or have come to terms with. It's a moment-by-moment thing. Sometimes I feel very tranquil, and other times I don't feel tranquil at all. What's going through my mind right now is to use the minutes and the hours I have left as fruitfully as possible. It helps to live in the moment in the essence that we use it productively. Right now, I'm feeling calm in large part because I'm here with you.
For the record, you are guilty of killing many women and girls.
Yes, that's true.
How did it happen? Take me back. Sorry. It seems like an interrogation to me.
A little bit.
What are the... What is that word? Antecedents, maybe? What are the antecedents of the behavior that we've seen? You were raised in what you consider to be a healthy home. You were not physically, sexually, or emotionally abused.
No, that's the part of the tragedy of this whole situation. I grew up in a wonderful home with 2 dedicated, loving parents as one of 5 brothers and sisters. We, as children, were the focus of my parents' lives. We regularly attended church. My parents did not drink, smoke, or gamble. There was no physical abuse or fighting in the home. And I'm not saying it was Leave It to Beaver, but it was a fine, solid Christian home. I hope no one will try to take the easy way out of this and accuse my family of contributing to this. I know, and I'm telling you as honestly as I know what happened. As a boy of 12 or 13, I encountered outside of the home in the local grocery and drugstores softcore pornography. Boys explore the sideways and the byways of neighborhoods, and in our neighborhood, people would bump the garbage, and from time to time, we would come across books of harder nature, more graphic. This also included detective magazines, etc., and I want to emphasize this. The most damaging kind of pornography, and I'm talking from a hard, real, personal experience, is that it involved violence and sexual violence. The wedding of those 2 forces, as I know all too well, brings about a behavior that is too terrible to describe.
Walk me through that. What was going on in your mind at that time?
Before we go any further, it is important to me that people believe what I'm saying. I'm not blaming pornography. I'm not saying it caused me to go out and do certain things. I take full responsibility for what I've done. It's not the question here. The issue is how this kind of literature contributed and helped mold and shape the kinds of violent behavior.
It fueled your fantasies.
In the beginning, it fuels this kind of thought process. Then at a certain time, in an instrumental in it crystallizing and making it into something that is almost separate entity inside.
You had gone about as far as you could go in your own fantasy life with printed material, photos, videos, etc. And then there was the urge to take the step over to a physical event.
Once you become addicted to it, and I look at this as kind of addiction, you look for more potent, more explicit, more graphic kinds of material. Like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder and gives you a greater sense of excitement, until you've reached the point where pornography only goes so far. The jumping off point where you begin to think that you're maybe actually doing it to give you that which is beyond reading about it and looking at it.
How long did you stay at that point before you actually assaulted someone?
A couple of years. I was dealing with very strong inhibitions against criminal and violent behavior. That was conditioned and bred into me from my neighborhood, environment, and church and schools. I knew it was wrong to think about it, and certainly to do it was wrong. I was on the edge, and the last vestige of restraint was being tested constantly, and I sailed through a kind of fantasy life that was fueled largely by pornography.
Do you remember what pushed you over the edge? Do you remember the decision to go for it? Do you remember where you decided to throw caution to the wind?
It's a very difficult thing to describe. The sensation of reaching out at that point where I couldn't control it anymore. The barriers I had learned as a child were not enough to hold it back from seeking out and harming somebody.
Would it be accurate to call that a sexual frenzy?
That's one way to describe it. A compulsion, a building up of this destructive energy. Another fact that I haven't mentioned is the use of alcohol. In conjunction, my exposure to pornography, alcohol induced my inhibitions, and the pornography eroded them further.
After you committed your first murder, what was the emotional effect? What happened in the days after that?
Even all these years later, it is difficult to talk about. Reliving it through talking about it is difficult to say the least. I want you to understand what happened. It was like coming out of some horrible trance or dream. I can only liken it to, and I don't want to over-dramatize this, being possessed by something so awful and alien, and the next morning waking up and remembering what happened and realizing that, in your own eyes of the law, and certainly in the eyes of God, you're responsible. To wake up in the morning and realize what I had done with a clear mind, and with all my essential moral and ethical feelings intact, absolutely horrified me.
You hadn't known you were capable of that before?
There's no way to describe the brutal urge to do that. And once it has been satisfied or spent, all that energy level recedes.
Yeah, never mind. You're right.
I become myself again. Basically, I was a normal person. I wasn't a guy hanging out in bars or a bum. I wasn't a pervert in the sense that people look at somebody and say, there's something wrong with him. I was a normal person. I had good friends. I led a normal life. Except for this one small but very potent destructive segment that I kept very secret and close to myself. Those who had been so influenced by violence in the media, particularly pornographic violence, are not some kind of inherent monsters. We are your sons and husbands. You grew up in regular families. Pornography can reach in and snatch a child out of any house today. It snatched me out of my home 20 or 30 years ago. As diligent as my parents were, and they were diligent in protecting their children, and as good as a Christian home had, there's no protection against the kinds of influence that are loose in society that in a society that tolerates.
Outside these walls, there are several hundred reporters that wanted to talk to you, and you asked me to come because you had something you wanted to say. You feel that hardcore pornography and the door to it, software pornography, is doing untold damage to other people and causing other women to be abused and killed the way you did.
I'm no social scientist, and I don't pretend to believe what John Q's Citizen thinks about this, but I've lived in prison for a long time now, and I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence. Without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, deeply consumed by the addiction. The FBI's own study on serial homicides shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography. It's true.
What would your life have been like without that influence?
I know it would have been far better, and not just for me, but for a lot of other people, victims and families. There's no question it would have been a better life, and I'm absolutely certain there would not have involved this kind of violence.
If I were able to ask the kind of questions that are being asked, one would be, are you thinking about all those victims and their families that are so wounded? Years later, their lives aren't normal. They will never be normal. Is there remorse?
I know people will accuse me of being self-serving, but through God's help, I have been able to come to a point much too late, where I can feel the hurt and the pain I'm responsible for. Yes, absolutely. During the past few days, myself and a number of investigators have been talking about the unsolved cases, murders I was involved in. It's hard to talk about all of these years later, because it relives all the terrible feelings and thoughts I had steadfastly and diligently dealt with, I think, successfully. It has reopened, and I have felt the pain and the horror of that. I hope that those who have caused so much grief, even if they don't believe my expression of sorrow, will believe what I'm saying now. There are those loose in their towns and communities like me whose dangerous impulses are fueled day in and day out by the violence in the media in various forms, particularly sexualized violence. That is what scares me. Is when I see what's on cable TV, some of the violence in the movies that go into homes today is stuff they shouldn't show in X-rated movies. Theaters wouldn't show in X-rated movie adult theaters 30 years ago.
The slasher movies.
That is the most graphic violence on screen, especially when children are unattended or unaware that they could be a Ted Bundy, that they could have a predisposition to that kind of behavior.
One of the final murders you committed was 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. I think the public outcry is greater there because an innocent child was taken from a playground. What did you feel after that? Were they the normal emotions after that?
I can't really talk about that right now. It's too painful. I'd like to be able to convey to you what that experience is, but I won't be able to talk about that. I can't begin to understand the pain of the parents of these children and young women that I've harmed feel. I can't restore much to them, if anything. I won't pretend to, and I don't expect them to forgive me. I'm not asking for it. That kind of forgiveness is of God, and if they have it, they have it, and if they don't, maybe they'll find it someday.
Do you deserve the punishment the state has inflicted upon you?
That's a very good question. I don't want to die. I won't kid you. I deserve certainly the most extreme punishment society has, and I think society deserves to be protected from me and others like me. That's for sure. What I hope will come of our discussion is that I think society deserves to be protected from itself. We have been talking. There are forces out at loose in this country, especially this kind of violent pornography where, on one hand, well-meaning people will condemn the behavior of a Ted Bundy while they're walking past a magazine rack full of the very kinds of things they send young kids down the road to being Ted Bundys. That's the irony. I'm talking about going around beyond retribution, which is what people want with me. There's no way in the world that killing is going to restore those beautiful children to their parents and correct and soothe the pain. But there's a lot of other kids playing in the streets around the country today who are going to be dead tomorrow and the next day because of other young people are reading and seeing the kinds of things available in social media today.
There is tremendous cynicism. Cynicism? Cynicism about you on the outside, I suppose, for good reason. I'm not sure there's anything you could say that people would believe, yet you told me, and I have heard this through our mutual friend, John Tanner, that you have accepted the forgiveness of Jesus Christ and are a follower and a believer in him. Do you draw strength from that as you approach these final hours?
I do. I can't say that being in the valley of the shadow of death is something I've become all that accustomed to, and that I'm strong and nothing's bothering me. It's no fun. It gets kind of lonely. Yet I have to remind myself, every one of us will go through this someday, one way or another.
It's appointed unto man.
Countless millions who have walked this earth before us have gone through this. So it is just an experience we will all share.
That was a
Well, there's
pretty,
two more.
Yeah, I know. Ted Bundy was executed at 7:15 a.m. the day after this conversation was recorded.
In closing, sin leads to death. Jesus died for your sin. We are in a war. Be a man. Put your sin to death.
Throw the book down. Put the cookie
finished.
down. Oh.
Now that conversation right there.
If that was like a legit, like...
I kind of want to read the whole entire thing now.
Well, if Ted legitimately, after countless murders and...
Acting out his evil fantasies.
Yes. It's very cool that if he did really accept Jesus as his savior, that he did it before he was executed. And so I could see how a quote-unquote normal Christian life or Christian person would probably not understand that. How someone that bad could still deserve to live in God's kingdom. But
to be honest, none of us really deserve it.
all of us
Have
technically are like him, because we still can do stuff that he does. I mean, yes, they're not as bad, but we're still...
God doesn't see the distinction.
Yeah.
Sin is sin.
Yep. But in a society and as humans, we have a tendency to distinguish some sins are worse than others, and
the severity of the crime.
Yeah. So, nah, dude, that was a great book.
That conversation, though, man.
That conversation got you in the feels pretty good.
I was just sitting here like, well, he has it a whole lot worse. I will give him that. He was actually like the worst person ever. Like, he went around murdering, raping, doing all of these things. He was a criminal. He deserved to die. And yet he accepted the forgiveness of Jesus Christ. And this is totally off topic. It's not about porn or anything, but it's about the topic of forgiveness. I have a very hard time with that one. I have a hard time forgiving myself when I think I've hurt somebody or when I think I've failed anybody. For me, I look at myself and I think I should be better, I should know better, I do know better, because I grew up just like him. I grew up in a good Christian home. My parents love me. They give me all the attention I could ever need. And yet, I still have this hard time forgiving myself for stupid things. Like,
it's crazy how we all think we're bulletproof, and yet the first weak sign of something that leads us to temptation, we're just okay. I mean, like, it's just crazy how much we think living and growing up in a Christian home, being a believer of Christ,
gives us this,
and saying, you know, and I've got the power of God in me, you know, and just you turn that around in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, we think it gives us this higher plane that we can just walk on. But we're no better than any other non-believer, any atheist, agnostic, Buddhist, Muslim. We're no better than anybody else. We are still tempted just like everybody else, and we're still human. Having a relationship with Christ doesn't change the fact that we're human, doesn't change the fact that...
Does it change the fact that your voice cracks?
Yeah, no. See? Again. Voice cracks, man. I'm human. I still have voice cracks. My voice is still transitioning, apparently. I don't know why.
Well, aren't you like 20?
Not yet. I'm not
19?
20 yet. There you go. 1 month, man. 1 month.
We're both 19? That's crazy, man.
Until I'm 20 and then I'm older than you. Because I'm awesome.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't change the fact that we're still human. We make mistakes.
Go get Jesus. He loves you. All right.
Yep.
Well,
that was
I
chapter 8.
I think that's...
The Slippery Slope of Ted Bundy.
I just thought it was cool how it was that kind of, like, third-person point of view. That's pretty cool.
We will get back to you on the appendix thing. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I'm just looking through it, because I don't... Yeah, I don't think so. I think we will look through it. Just skim it. Maybe next week before we start. Because I don't know. Tired. I'm not sure what we're gonna do next week, or what. You know, if we're gonna start a new book series, or if we're just gonna talk about random stuff. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll just look through this and see if we find something interesting, and then if we do, we'll obviously tell you next week, or we'll figure out something else. So, as far as I'm concerned, we won't actually have a podcast episode reading the appendix. We'll just look through it and see if there's something interesting, and then we'll bring it up next week.
Yeah.
So, that was Porn Again Christian by Mark Driscoll. If you, again...
Listen to this.
Yeah, probably not. I don't know. We've had a few downloads, which is great, which is awesome. I love that.
great. Makes me feel loved.
I didn't realize you could actually like a podcast, so, or like an episode, so just smash that like button.
Please.
It's funny, because I say that for my YouTube channel, but it's funny how I'm saying this for this Christian podcast. Yeah, it's funny. But
we want to feel the love.
Seriously, and you can, so let us know, and just find any kind of comment section or just like it and let us know what you think, and if this helped you guys. It definitely gave me different insight, and I'm still working on it, but it pushed me a few extra steps to figure it out. So that was the Porn Again Christian series. Any other thoughts that you want to bring up before we close tonight?
Nah, I don't have anything.
That's it?
Yep, that's all I got, man.
Alright, well, thank you guys again for staying and tuning in on our final episode of the series, and until next time.